Welcome to episode number 3 of the Business Hustle podcast. Today I'm really fortunate to have my guest here, Phil Nielsen. What's up, Phil?
What's up, Alex? Thanks for having me, man.
No problem. Thanks for being here. So tell us a little bit about your business, what you do, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, so I work in pest control, and so we've been in Raleigh about 10 years. Our business model has historically just been hiring door-to-door sales guys in the summertime, and that's how we've grown. So we go through a lot of quantum growth, and so we're trying to transition into some other forms of advertising, but we deal with mainly residential pest control, but mainly a background in sales, because that's where we get most of our growth from.
So how did you get into pest control? Because I don't imagine there's a college degree for pest control. So
No.
how did you find yourself making your way to pest control?
And that's kind of the funny part about it is when I'm traveling around sometimes on planes and people ask me what I do, I usually sit next to pretty interesting people, like the man that was Obama's personal trainer, and then he asked me what I do, and I said I do pest control, and there's never a follow-up question after that. But I got into it. I got home from serving a 2-year mission in Brazil, and I was at the gym, and I had a guy that I had known for a long time from high school pull up in this really nice brand new car, and I knew he was supposed to be poor college kid. I asked him how he did it. He said selling pest control. And for me, a kid from Denver, I thought that meant like taking a box of Raid and going door to door and trying to sell that. So it didn't really make sense to me. Then when I got down to Utah for school, it was bigger business that guys would leave for the summer and go sell pest control in some of the warmer climates. So I sold pest control a couple of years, and then got married, kind of got into a different industry, and a couple of years later, the Reader's Digest version is I got back in touch with my current business partner now, and we decided to start a pest control company together. So that's how we're here now.
Very cool, very cool. So is Moxie, is it local or is it national, or where does Moxie kind of fit into that?
So we've got 14 different offices nationwide. Each one is its own separate entity. We function kind of all, since we own the same name, but everyone's owned by a different person across the country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So I want to get into a little bit into sales. You mentioned your history in sales and how that's kind of how you grow. So talk to me a little bit about the sales process that you guys go through with your customers and kind of how that works.
Yeah. Our sales process, being that it's door to door, is one of the hardest and most aggressive types of sales that there can be. And so you're basically having to knock on somebody's door who didn't ask you to be there. And so you're overcoming that hurdle initially, and then you're having to create a need for your product that may not have been there already, and then actually explain why you're the best service. And so we generally are just working and knocking doors in areas where we have a lot of customers, because we're just trying to simplify. What we're trying to do is make our routes easier for our field experts to go around and spray houses. And so by doing that, if they're going to be in one area, we try and fill that area up as much as possible. Right. And so we just talk about the neighbors that we're already taking care of. And a lot of times we're just trying to pass some discounts onto a customer because I'm already there. Right. And so it's less gas, less payroll, time everything for me just to go service their house. Yeah.
What do you think? Because you hear door-to-door sales, and you mentioned it's one of the most aggressive, hardest parts of the sales process. How do you increase your chances for success? What are some of the tips that you train your sales guys to go through to increase their chances for success?
Yeah, so we talk about a couple of things with our sales guys. So first is ethics. So I talk a lot about having a good moral and ethical foundation. It's hard in sales sometimes to not convince yourself it's okay to tell a little white lie, because it's all in the name of making a sale. I just believe that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. And so part of our business model is that we're not just trying to create salesmen that know how to sell, But we want to, if I teach someone how to sell really well and they're really good at being persuasive, but they're just a bad dude,
right,
then I'm just sending out these really terrible people into the world when
right.
they go take on another job. So that's the first thing, is that I think it is being honest and ethical will come back to only help you. Secondly, they got to work really, really hard. It's just a numbers game. It's how fast you walk, how many doors you knock on, people you talk to, and sales you make. And I'd say our biggest secret sauce is we talk a lot about nonverbal communication.
Okay.
80+% of the way you communicate is what you do with not your words.
Right.
And then secondarily is paraverbal communication. So like the tone of my voice, if I'm ending up every time I say something, or if my tone of voice goes down, sounding more confident and sure of what I'm saying. And so I tell my guys to focus on those specific things, and if they'll just think about those things only, the byproduct of that is that they'll sell better and do better, and then that translates to other areas. That's what's unique about our business, is no one's selling pest control door to door for life.
Right.
Usually it's 3, 4, 5 summers making enough money, and then they move on to the next thing.
Right.
If they'll do those things, they'll make more money than the average lawyer or doctor
right.
or real estate agent, because they apply those same principles to what they're doing. Yeah.
How do you get over the fear of rejection?
I just do it a lot. So I call it baptism by fire. Generally, when I'm interviewing a guy to hire them, if I see a lot of that initially, that some of that is innate, right? So like some guys are already kind of used to, they're kind of not that scared of rejection. We tend to be working with and hire a lot of return LDS missionaries, who those guys know how to deal with rejection better than anybody. Yeah. So they're getting rejected harder for something they care more about probably than pest control. And so those guys are usually pretty good at handling rejection.
Yeah, selling pest control is probably pretty easy compared to selling religion.
I would say so, yeah. Especially depending on where you go.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a lot easier.
Yep. What are some tips that you could give people out there who are starting small businesses, not necessarily pest control, but are starting small businesses? What are some of the baseline steps to increase your sales?
Yeah. It's consistency and follow up. And so when you have guys that are going out and selling, training has to be done every single day, all of the time. And the way that training needs to be done, in my opinion, if I were to work with a salesperson, and if I were to identify 5 things that they really sucked at, I probably am not telling them 5 things to go work on that day. I'm probably telling them 1 or 2. And so you've got to be on top. Everything is line upon line. And so if you fix this one thing, you're going to increase your sales a little bit. And then we'll stack on top of that. You fix that one thing, you're going to increase your sales a little bit more. And so we just stack on top of each other. And then the other part of it is you've got to really find a way to keep your guys highly motivated. Really, you want to be doing kind of crazy, wild things. Our meetings are they're loud, they're energetic. There's theme songs sometimes. There's competitions. There's incentives. Anything to keep somebody focused mentally, because I'd say more than 50% of someone's success in sales is between the ears, and less about their sales ability.
What are some of the steps that you take personally to get yourself in the right mindset? So, because you mentioned a lot of it's between your ears, a lot of it's in your head. So back in the day, or even now, when you're going out to sell, what are some of the steps you take to get into that mindset? Yeah,
I think there's like 2 different ones. When I sold back in the day before I started the business, I would just find what it took to kind of get me pumped up. I think there's a lot of good comparisons between sales and sports, and what like an athlete would go do to kind of try and get himself revved up for a game. Music. The guys have soundtracks they listen to on the way out to the doors.
What was your go-to song back in the day?
I don't remember what it was. Actually, you know what? I didn't do a lot of songs actually in the car. I would every morning wake up and I would watch a This is almost embarrassing. I would watch a Michael Jordan highlight video
Nice.
in the morning, and that was, watching that was kind of what got me pumped up.
Yep.
more than music. Nowadays it's very similar. I would say that the other thing I really tell my guys, all that stuff is short term. If anybody's played football out there, you go in at halftime getting your tail kicked, and your coach gives you this awesome. You got the greatest coach of all time give you the best pep talk. You go back out, you're ready to go, take someone's head off. It's going to last about 5 minutes. Yeah. Then you're right back to like, this hurts. I'm tired. We're getting creamed. So you got to find your reason why. Why are you selling pest control? And that goes way deeper than I want money to go buy a car or pay for college. It goes way, way deeper than that. Like, where are you trying to get to that this is going to get you 5 steps closer to? Because you trying to graduate medical school debt-free if you're selling for me, or you trying to buy a home for you and your wife, college fund for your kids, whatever that why is. When you're out on the doors, it's 1 million degrees. You've sweated through your clothes, and you've gotten 40 no's in a row. The only thing that's going to keep you going is that thing.
Yep. It's like Zig Ziglar used to say. I think it was Zig. Something along the lines of, motivation is like, bathing. It only lasts a certain while. You have to do it daily. And I think that's a huge thing, is that a lot of small business owners will get amped up. They'll listen to, a podcast or a YouTube video, get amped up, on Sunday, over the weekend, Sunday night, trying to get themselves ready for Monday, and then by Monday afternoon they're all discouraged, and they don't replenish that.
Yep.
So we've kind of covered the sales a little bit. I want to get into a little more of the small business side of things. What are some challenges that you run into running a small business? So how many employees do you have?
Right now I have about between 25 and 30. We've had as many during the summertime when I've got guys selling for me, as many as 100 plus. Okay. Yeah.
So what's the biggest challenge of running a company with 100 employees?
I think people can be one of your greatest challenges. Some of our greatest challenges come from both people, but also extreme growth. And so a lot of people go through quantum growth where they're growing at 100% a year, 150% a year, and it can be really hard when you have to go from 1 month to the next. You got to hire 30 employees, and the odds that all those people are the exact person that you want, that are going to take care of the customer the way you want, when you have to hire them in that short of time, it's not very likely or very good. And so it's constantly hiring and kind of managing those people, and then making sure that in that extreme growth that you're hiring the right people, and then the right people to manage those people so that they're taking care of the customer.
How do you still how does hustle still enter into your life? So the title of this podcast is Business Hustle. How are you still hustling as a business owner? Because you're obviously you've got a company, you're well on your way to being long-term successful. How do you still keep the hustle?
I think it's similar to what I tell my guys about finding the why. In fact, I was on a different friend's podcast. Well, I think I wasn't on it. He just told the story. But I had lunch with a friend where I had an interesting realization in my business recently. I think when you're starting, I think there's some pretty serious pain that comes along with starting a business, and that automatically creates hustle, or you die, right? Like those are your two choices. The business dies or you hustle. And so in the beginning, where I was, eating Progresso soup every single day, for food, and just trying to cover payroll, and sometimes advancing my credit card to make payroll, those days, working all night and all day and hustling to get stuff done was easy, because it was there was this pain that was pushing me to make this thing work. Then I kind of got to a point to where we got successful. The business was making money. I was making money. I finally, took my wife out of living in small places, and we were able to buy a house and move into a house, and things kind of got really comfortable. And then the problem I ran into there is that my life was really good. Yeah. And so I think maybe I didn't set my why high enough, because then I got there, and then the pain that caused me to hustle before was sort of gone.
Yeah.
And so I could go to work and hustle or not hustle, and I still got to come home to my house and my kids and my life that was pretty good. So it got, I had done it, and it was pretty hard to have a bad day. And then, over the year where we kind of slowed down and didn't experience as much quantum growth, I was kind of going to work every day, and I was looking at employees that had worked for me for a long time and had been loyal, hardworking, good people that worked for me. And they probably would have ran to the ends of the earth for me if I asked them to. I'm just looking around and seeing people that looked generally unhappy.
Yeah.
And then I sort of started to realize that although my life was good, I was generally not happy with work and what I was doing. And that's because people in businesses are meant to grow, and they're meant to have growth. And if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yep.
So there's no real stagnant where I can just stay the same across the board. And so
one of my favorite opening lines to a book is the classic Jim Collins "Good to Great," where he opens the book by saying "Good is the enemy to great," and that's 100% so true.
So true.
Whether you're like, and I guess everyone follows this trajectory, but where you hustle, you struggle, you fight, you claw, and then when you get to good, you're a good pest control company, you're a good whatever company. It's so easy to take your foot off the gas and say, okay, we're going to just enjoy this. And that's why so many people stagnate at that good level, and they don't take it to the next level of becoming a great company.
Totally. Yeah. And I think if you have pride in what you're doing, the real truth is, even if you say we're really good, if you're really trying to be the best, then growth is inevitable. It's impossible if I'm a pest control company or a retail store that if I'm the best at those things, it should be impossible there's not growth, because everybody wants to work with the best pest control company or shop at the best retail store. And so I just had this realization, although there were times where we were growing at like 150%, I had, people, pooping their pants in customers' houses and trucks getting in accidents and all these things that I thought were so hard back in the day. I would have traded in a second to have those things.
Sorry, I can't get over it.
I would have traded in a second to go back.
Yeah,
that's a story for a different podcast. The pooping in the customer's house, because it's pretty legendary. But I would have rather traded that than go back to where I'm at work, we're stagnant.
Yeah.
I have employees that are good people that I'm not utilizing them to their talents, and I'm seeing them just show up every day and punch a clock. And so I had this realization probably a couple months ago, and ever since then I have a new why. And I just want to, I have new numbers I want to hit. I have people that I want to develop, and I want them to be the best version of themselves and get to their whys. And so that's really what's pushing me right now, because I still get to go home and my life's still pretty good. Yeah. But I have a whole new why. So my hustle's different. But it feels like I'm hustling maybe harder than when there was pain, because I'm smarter. I understand better where my time needs to be spent, and what things I'm trying to achieve.
And it's a different hustle, because the hustle for you 10, 15 years ago was literally struggling to survive.
Right.
And the hustle for you today is more networking, phone call, and so it's a different kind of hustle, but they're equally important.
Right.
And so, it's important. And going back to, finding your why, I think that's 100% right, that you've got to find your why, and you always have to be referring back to your why, because your why is going to change. Because if you started out as a pest control company wanting to struggle to make it, and you say, I want to be a 10, 15, $20 million pest control company, that's maybe a little too far of a stretch for when you're just trying to pay your bills.
Right.
But if you say, my goal is to make payroll this month and, have a little bit left over, that's my why. Or, I want to become self-sufficient so I'm not dependent on my parents or dependent on this. If that's your why, then once you achieve that, if you're constantly reviewing your why, then you can kind of set markers. And you always want to stretch yourself so you're not, setting your whys or your goals too short term. But at the same time, you don't want to get discouraged because your why is too far out there. And so I
Yep.
think reviewing your why often and readjusting that and finding the next mile marker, the next milestone.
Well, I think it's Brian Tracy that talks about that, how people way overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, and they grossly underestimate what they can accomplish in 5 years. And so I would say, like, people that are in like their like early to mid to late 20s, I would say, like, God, people. I mean, you and I talk a lot about, you know, Gary Vee and how we listen to him, and he talks about patience and how young people are. And so, you know, I'm 35 going on 36. I definitely feel that way. And so I try and do that with the kids that work for me that are in their early 20s to try and, I wish I would have known this. But when you're that young, I mean, you could be shooting for the stars and just have patience.
I mean, the thing is, though, is you're young. You've got another 30 years of working life if you want to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like,
maybe 50 years.
Yeah. I mean, you know, like, I mean, that's the crazy thing. Like, if you threw away the next 10 years of your life in a failed business venture, you're trying to grow and you're not making it anywhere, you're still only 45.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and so that's the biggest thing is the patience. Is just knowing that, you know, and Gary Vaynerchuk talks about, you know, micro speed and macro patience. And I think that's really key, is that, you know, day to day you want to be hustling, you want to be moving quickly, you want to be adapting quickly, but on the long term, the 5-10 year plan, you got to have that patience, because it's when you don't have that patience is when you try to take shortcuts and you get caught.
Yeah. Well, people so badly. I mean, it's like when you're kids, right? It's like when you're a kid and like you're 12, 13, and you see the people driving the cars. And I want a car. You're always looking forward to like the next thing where you want to be. And now the older I get, I find myself wanting to be like 10 years younger. Yeah. Because the need I feel right now to be moving at a fast pace while being patient to learn is that I see markets and industries changing so quickly right now that it almost feels like I don't even have enough time in a day to get done what I need to get done, to try and stay ahead of the curve, to evolve with the way everything is changing. And I think it changes faster now than it did 10 years ago.
For sure.
But I'm feeling like I could spend all day long trying to figure this stuff out and still not have enough time to stay ahead.
Yeah, you would give away everything you had today. I mean, besides your family, but you would give away all your worldly possessions if you could go back 10 years.
Right now.
And with the knowledge that you have today.
And then work for free for 5 years on top of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. What role does learning play into your hustle and your business today?
Yeah, that was a huge part of my growth when I was younger. I'm one of the only people that owns a branch that didn't graduate from college, and I kind of got at a place where I was doing sales, and had this opportunity that kind of made it so I wasn't able to finish college. I also really felt like I didn't need college to do what I was going to go do.
Do you regret that? Because I didn't go to college either.
I don't regret not going to college. I will say this. People always ask me, like, what are you going to tell your kids? And if you ask both my kids, they know they have to go to college. So I'll tell both my kids to go to college. If they don't have something better that requires them not to go to college, I'm not opposed to going to school. I think there's reasons to go to school. I will say this. Had I gone to school, there are things that I had to learn the hard way or teach myself that I would have learned probably taking college courses. There's also a lot that I've learned through running a business that I never would have learned in school. But there's just some small things that were more annoying, like maybe some simple accounting or things like that I just taught myself. But I think if you're determined enough like me to go buy an accounting textbook and put yourself through accounting class, then I was able to do it. It just might be easier if you're 18 and you can just sit through accounting class and learn that stuff.
Yeah. So what are you doing to further your education now? Like, how does that play in your growth pattern?
So I was really big in reading, and I sort of kind of got away from that. We'll call it my lazy content years when my pain went away. And I right now I schedule my time the same way I schedule, the same way I have to schedule time to take a shower in the morning and brush my teeth, the same way I personally schedule time to go to the gym each day, and schedule time with my family. I schedule time for reading and learning. And so right now I'm particularly obsessed with, digital marketing and social media, because I think that's really helpful for my business. But also too, like I'm also like Excel dumb. And so I also am putting myself basically through like Excel classes to try and become better at that, because those are things I think will help me become better at running my business. And so I focus specifically on that. I'll sprinkle some books in there too that are just more, rah motivation, good positive mindset, because I think everybody needs that. But I schedule time each day to get that in. I think that's equally as important as work I do to make my business better.
Yeah, and that's the tough thing, is that those types of activities don't translate directly into dollars, and so it's harder to set aside the time for that too. But yeah, it's equally as important. What's next on your reading list?
I've got the book you recommended me, actually, and then reading Crushing It, the Gary Vaynerchuk book. But everything I'm reading now has to do with digital marketing, and I just mostly because I need to understand it better. I've lost a lot of money paying a lot of people to try and do it that hasn't worked. And so I don't think it's their fault. It's my fault, I think, for not kind of...
Why is it your fault?
Because I didn't understand it enough to hire better and to tell them what they should and shouldn't be doing. And so it's my business. I have this habit of, that I think is the right one, is everything in my business that doesn't work is my fault. I try and point fingers when it goes well at who else did it. Good to Great talks about that, the mirror in the window. So when stuff goes wrong, you look in the mirror and say it's all on me. When things go right, look out the window and say it was all them. They're the ones that did it. So anytime something goes wrong and it's a decision that I ultimately made, it's on me. I could have known better about social media. I could have directed them better. I could have then followed up better. Instead of not knowing anything about it, makes it really difficult to manage a part of your business. So I think if you're running a business, you got to know all of it. There's no way you can manage somebody doing something that you can't and wouldn't do yourself. There's no way you can manage it properly or know that it's being done right.
Yeah, that's what, I listen a lot to Dave Ramsey and follow his advice and stuff like that. And that's what he says with like investing and stuff like that, is that you should never invest in something that you don't understand.
Right.
And when you sit down with somebody, in his case, an investment advisor, if they can't sit there and explain it to you to where you can basically understand what they're going to do with your money, then you shouldn't invest in it.
Yeah, good advice.
And, you can direct other people to pull the levers and write the checks and stuff like that, but you've got to have that baseline understanding of how it works and how it doesn't and all of that stuff so that you can make the decisions, because ultimately it is, your money that's kind of at risk.
Yeah, same thing with the business, right? At the end of the day, you're the business owner. It's your money.
And reputation.
Right. Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about company culture. So, what improvements have you made on company culture? What's kind of your viewpoint on company culture?
A couple of years ago, we focused a lot on company culture. I actually flew out the main person who I have in charge of that. We flew out to Vegas and went and walked around the Zappos campus down there, and so. It was really cool to see the way that they did things, and the main changes we made. I read a really good book by Chip Conley called Peak, and he talks about Maslow's theory of hierarchy, where he talks about the bottom layer being basic needs are being met, and then the layers on top of that. So we sort of looked at our business and kind of did some things and thought, we're in the world of pest control. And so we're kind of people we hire generally are more middle class. And so if we wanted to be the best pest control company there, then or in North Carolina or in the country, then we needed to be the best pest control company. So we looked for areas where we could provide a lot of value to an employee, being empathetic and putting ourselves in their shoes without necessarily it costing us a whole bunch of money. So, for example, I have a guy who comes to my office and works on all of my pest control trucks, and I get a discounted rate through oil changes, very, very inexpensive. And so every month I pay for any employee's oil change while he's already there. He's already there.
Right.
It's a minimal cost. We keep a fridge full of drinks that they can have. We do pest control for free at their house. And so small things like that. Plus then we really focused a lot on integrating, making the actual work fun. I think people miss the mark on culture when they try and like throw a big party after work. Well, now you've made not working awesome, right? But like when they come back to work, it still sucks and they hate your guts, right?
They have to suffer through 8 hours of work to have fun.
They're like, you're really cool to party with, man, but I really hate your job and I don't want to work for you anymore. So we worked really hard on making the office really nice. A couple small things go a long way. But we'll do little mini parties. We celebrate odd holidays like Oreo Day, or Jelly Bean Day. We integrate games and things like that while people are working, so they're associating this fun company culture when they're answering phones. So they love their job. We do the party thing too. Yeah. But you got to, wherever you incentivize them to like, that's what they're going to like. So if it's a party, then they're not going to like the job. They're
well, like and I think that's the most. I think the most important thing, with company culture, whether you're in a company of 1 or you're a company of 20 or 100, is being intentional about it. You have to think about it. That it doesn't take. You don't have to spend $5,000 on a Christmas party or this or that to make company culture good. You don't even have to spend any money if you're taking the time to realize what your team members and your employees need, what they're interested in. It could be something as simple as working during March Madness and bringing in a couple extra TVs and getting your work done while you've got TVs going on. That doesn't cost any extra money. Exactly. It could be Oreo Day. Like those types of things. It's just being intentional about it. And a lot of times you forget about it. And I think the company culture starts when you're just a company of 1 or a company of 2, when it's you and your spouse or just you. The culture and how you work and the environment that you're working in, I think is gonna play out. And it's much easier to get it right the first time when you're small than trying to change culture when you're
hard to go back in
5 or
and
10
change.
employees deep.
Yeah, it's so hard to go back in and change. If I were giving advice to somebody doing that too, I would say if you're in like a business to consumer type business, or it could be B2B too. I would say small gestures. I think that's the key. Yep. So like small gestures for your customer, small gestures for your employee, right? So the same way we do things for employees that may not cost money, but it's genuine and it makes people like their job. I have my field experts. I tell them, hey, if you're out treating someone's house and you see their empty trash can at the end of the driveway, bring it up. Yep. I have field experts now that will have extra light bulbs in their truck, and if they're in a house treating and see a light bulb's out, they'll change a light bulb for them. Yep. That's not costing anyone money. It's not even our job or business, right? But those small gestures go a really long way because it shows that we care about the person, not just their money or for the employee their work. Yeah,
and I think Zappos is a great example of that because I went on a tour of their office a couple months ago, and you can tell the culture there is top notch, and the way they treat their customers, the way they treat themselves, and they've got 1,500, 2,000 employees, and that's not something that culture right now would be extremely hard to change either direction, right? And so once you've got to get that baseline of having good culture and giving your employees permission to act how they feel is in the best interest of, because if you're trying to micromanage culture, you're going to have a problem. If you kind of set the general frameworks of, we want to treat the customer the best way possible, we want to treat the people we work with the best way possible. If you set up the general framework and then give them a lot of autonomy to change light bulbs or to pull trash cans up or stuff like that, that's going to be much, much more successful as you're growing.
Just today, I feel like I had some validation that we were doing things right. I had a guy who was in the office and had switched to a job that would be out in the field. Theoretically, it's a sales position. He'd be making quite a bit more money. Yeah. And he came to me today and said, I understand I'm making more money, but I really love being in the office and being around all those people. And so I think that's what I want to stay there in the office. So he's taking a pay cut to stay in the office because of how much fun he has. I think that, to me, that's just a testament that you don't have to – look, you want to pay people a fair wage for the work. I'm a sales guy, so I believe in paying people based on their work. Right. But you don't have to pay people – you don't have to be the top of your industry in pay rate if your culture is good and people like being there. You understand your employees spend more time with you than with their own families. Yep. So if they like that a lot – then that goes a long way, and it's even worth money to people.
Yep. And I mean, and you even get into, retention of employees and stuff like that,
Yep.
and how expensive that is of hiring and firing employees and stuff like that. And so over the long term, treating your employees right is always going to be more beneficial.
Yep.
All right, so we're wrapping up. So what advice could you give the people that are out there that, well, I want to get a couple pieces of advice from you. So for the person out there who has an idea for a small business, is got a day job, is afraid to make the jump, what advice can you give them?
I would say, that means it's just like this podcast. I would say to hustle. I think that there's so many hours in the day that are wasted on social media, playing on our phones. I think that depending on how bad you want it, you've got to sacrifice something. So there were times in my life where I had a new baby, wife, and I knew that I wasn't willing to sacrifice that time, but I was willing to sacrifice sleep, maybe a couple meals, and maybe watching sports on the weekend. And so I would say keep your day job until you think you can get your business to the point to where you can make the leap. Sometimes making the leap isn't that bad because, like I said, that initial pain and forcing you to really attack it, sometimes that's better. But I'd say initially there's a lot you can do hustling on the side while keeping your regular job until it's to the point to where it needs all of your focus. And then, make sure your basic needs are met. You can, if you're a single guy, sleep on someone's couch, live off of the dollar menu. I used to come to North Carolina and stay at Days Inn for $59 a night because it included a continental breakfast, which meant bagels. So I would eat a bagel, pack 2 bagels for lunch, and then McDonald's dollar menu for dinner. So I'm living off of like $2 a day for food. So I would just hustle and sacrifice as much as you can, because the harder you go, the better the reward will be at the end.
What's your advice for the guy who's just started his side business? Maybe he's dependent on it full time for his income and he's scared.
You're just gonna lose a lot, and there's gonna be a lot of pain. But if you can make it so that just motivates you more the next day, and just understand that that's how it is. I mean, you heard me say on the podcast right now that something didn't work that I paid someone to do, and I'm taking full responsibility and blame for that. I'm the only one that got hurt in that scenario. They got paid. We let them go, but they still got their money. I just lost a bunch of money. Yep. So I would say if you're scared, I'd say you just have to rip off the Band-Aid, and you just have to do it, and just allow when things don't work to push you harder, and let that teach you a lesson to study harder, work harder, be smarter, work with different people. Allow that to push you and drive you. I think you'll surprise yourself in some of the things that you'll get done.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, I appreciate your time today. I think it's been a good conversation. I appreciate your time. And
thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks, Alex.